We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. Uh-oh, thrift diving.
Hey, what's up? It's Serena Pia from ThriftDiving.com, which is a podcast, a blog, and a YouTube channel that helps you decorate, improve, and maintain your home with paint, power tools, and thrift stores without sacrificing your budget, the environment, or style. Welcome to episode 87 of the Thrift Diving Podcast, and today we're going to talk about when should you not paint wood furniture. Now, I can tell you, in my years of refinishing and painting furniture, it's been about 12 years, I've painted a lot of furniture. And looking back at some of the things that I've painted, there were things that I probably maybe should have stripped and refinished and not covered up the beautiful wood grain. But today we're going to talk about when are those specific times when maybe you need to put that paintbrush down and walk away from a piece of furniture. And, the reason why I'm thinking about this topic is because I actually had gotten an email from someone who works for the magazine called Dwell. So as a content creator, we get emails all the time from people that want to put us in magazines and ask us questions about some topic that maybe they saw on our website. And she said, okay, I found your article on when should you not paint wood furniture, and I've got a few questions. Would you be interested in answering them? And I was like, well, yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and answer these questions. And so it got me thinking about the fact that I don't think we've talked about this topic on Thrift Diving Podcast. So I thought today we're going to talk about it because the people who are listening to this podcast, some of you are advanced. You've been painting furniture. You're very comfortable with doing that. Other people are newbies and they've never done it. They're still trying to do their first project. And so even if you are somebody who's advanced, if you're a newbie, you might have a piece of furniture that you are on the fence about. You don't know whether or not you should paint it. And so I'm going to talk about the times when I think that maybe you might want to ask yourself these questions. You might want to put the paintbrush down if these things apply to you. And we're going to start it off with the first one. And that one is, you need to put the paintbrush down if your grandma is rolling over in her grave. Now, here's the thing. You might be somebody who had gotten an inheritance of some sort of furniture. Maybe it's an antique piece that's more than 100 years old. Maybe it's just vintage. You may not even know whether or not it's valuable. It might even be invaluable. It might have been in your family for years. Who knows? But if your grandma, if you could imagine yourself, I'm just saying your grandma, but it could be your Aunt Betty, whoever. If you can imagine that piece of furniture that person gave you, and if they were to see you slathering paint on this furniture, what do you think they'd do? Now, I know they're not here, but even though they may not be here, there may be other people in your family who would have a problem with you painting this, right? So not only would Grandma Betty or Auntie Betty be rolling over in her grave, but maybe your mom, maybe your dad, your sister, your brother, whoever would probably get upset at you for painting this because it could be a family heirloom and it ended up in your possession and it doesn't work with anything that you own, right? It's probably sitting in the garage somewhere. You feel guilty because it's sitting there, but then you also feel guilty for painting it. And you don't know what to do with it. You can't donate it because it's invaluable. It's in your family. It's this heirloom, but it's kind of ugly. But my opinion is, if you feel that this is a piece that could really kind of start some problems between your family, then maybe you shouldn't donate it. Maybe you can just give it to somebody else in your family. If it's not working for you, but you know that you just don't have it in you to paint it because you know your grandma would be really upset, then I think you should put the paintbrush down, maybe donate it to one of your family members and see if it can work for their home. That's a situation that maybe you don't want to paint it. Now, the reason why I'm telling you to give it away is because there is a factor of quote unquote ruining a piece of furniture, right? And this is one of the questions that the woman had asked me. She said, well, is ruining furniture in the eye of the beholder? Let's say someone doesn't intend to sell a piece and just wants to keep it for themselves. Should they even care about doing stuff to the furniture to lower its market value? And what I told her, this person trying to interview me, is that, I know that there are people who are wood lovers out there and there are people that just feel it doesn't matter what kind of wood it is. They feel they should never see paint on a piece of wood. And they're quick to tell you that, hey, you ruined it. I do feel this is kind of subjective because of the fact that they think that every piece of furniture that's wood should never be painted. But I do think that you can be objective about this. You know, if you are in possession of a piece of furniture that's more than 100 years old, it's an antique, anything less than 100 years old is vintage, and it may or may not be valuable. It may be invaluable to your family. I don't think that you should be painting those pieces. I really don't. Because somebody in your family is going to have a problem with it. And even if it's just Grandma Betty, you know she'd be upset, but she's not here anymore. I still think that it is something that's important to your family. And I don't know if you should paint that. I personally don't feel that you should paint it. Now, here's the thing. If you feel that you totally want to paint this and you don't care if somebody else is going to be upset about it in your family, it was left to you in Grandma Betty's will, and you really want to paint it because you want to bring new life into it, then I guess by all means, paint it. But I do think that if it's something that is going to cause problems in your family, if it's something that you're on the fence about, you're not sure, then just leave it. Don't paint it if you're not 100% sure that you're ready to paint it, or you feel that somebody in your family is going to give you strife about it, just leave it. Don't paint it. Okay, the second thing is, I think that you should put the paintbrush down and don't paint wood if you're using the wrong paint. All right, so I know that there are different paints that you can use. We did an episode on this. In fact, I believe it was like episode 75 or 73. I will have it down in the show notes. But I did a podcast episode on what is the best brand of furniture paint. And I told you in that podcast episode, I don't think there is one particular brand. I think it really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. I think any number of furniture paints are good. However, if you are using a paint that's clearly not made for furniture, you're going to get bad results. In fact, there was a chair, my real estate agent years ago, she had a chair that she paid me to refinish. And I don't know what kind of paint she used, but it was this black, shiny, it started chipping off. It was horrible. And so I had to figure out how to strip all of that and try to get it back to its beautiful wood. And it was a little stained, but it was a lot of work. And it had nooks and crannies, and I had to go in there with little fine tooth, like safety pins, trying to scrape out all the gunk. But it wasn't destroyed. It could have been. It looked beautiful when I was done. And you can find the link down below in the blog post. I will share a picture of it there. But it was a beautiful chair when I was done stripping it. But the kind of paint that she used, it just wasn't the right paint. And I think if she had painted it and she had a better quality paint, then maybe it would have looked better and it would not have been, quote unquote, ruined. But if you're using the wrong kind of paint, and that wrong kind of paint would be, let's say, for example, you're completely new and you don't know that if you're using latex paint, just regular over-the-counter paint that you would use for your walls, if you're using that kind of paint, I would recommend that you get a furniture paint. Otherwise, you are going to have to probably do a little bit of sanding. You are going to have to prime. It's going to add some extra steps for you. And if you're using a semi-gloss paint because you just want it to be shiny, it's probably going to peel over time. So if you're using the wrong kind of paint, don't even do it. Don't do it. Just find yourself a good quality chalk paint, or, it may not be a chalk-based paint, but it may be something that has a top coat built into it, but it's made specifically for furniture. Then I would say, okay, paint your wood furniture. But if you're a complete newbie and you don't know what you're doing, and you're just taking some sort of, chalkboard, let me give you a good example. Let's say, for example, you know nothing about furniture paint, but you've been hearing all this information about chalk paint. Well, you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and you go there and you see chalkboard paint. Well, chalkboard paint is not the same as chalk paint. So if you are somebody that doesn't really know the difference between what kind of paints are out there, then I don't think you should be painting furniture, because you might choose the wrong paint. You may not get a good finish, a good quality finish on your furniture. So I would say take a step back, learn a little bit more about what kind of paint to use before you jump into this project, especially relating it back to number one. If you were brand new to painting furniture and you're painting this family heirloom, this antique hutch or vintage hutch that your grandma left you, but you're using the wrong paint, well, you might actually ruin it. And that's not what you want. You want a good quality paint that's going to get good results so that even though, it's problematic for your family, it looks beautiful and it's going to last. So make sure that you understand what kind of paint you should be using. Look at the information down below in the show notes to see, the conversation that we had about which paint to use, and then make your decision on whether you want to paint it. All right, number 3, do not paint wood furniture if you haven't consulted Papa Google or Mama eBay. Because really, one splash of paint on something that could be an antique or could be something that's a valuable vintage piece, you will have just ruined it and you wouldn't be able to sell it. So I think I've told you about this project before, but years ago, I went to a thrift store and found this amazing drafting table. It's an Anco built vintage. I don't even know from what year, but it says on the side Anco built. And I was able to find out before I did anything to it that it was actually valuable. Now, when I say valuable, in fact, even before I started recording, I did a little search and I found some vintage drafting tables for about $2,000. And then I saw some for maybe $350, $400. So there was a wide range. But when I first had found it for $30 at the thrift store on a really good 50% off day, that's back when I was painting everything. I was so excited about painting furniture that everything that I brought into the house automatically got a coat of paint. And I was going to paint this vintage drafting table until I did a search. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm seeing like $325 sold on eBay for this Anco built vintage. Oh, no. We can't paint this. Now, years later, I did actually refinish it. And I don't know if that would have destroyed the value. It turned out beautiful. You can find it down below. You can watch the video. But I stripped it. I sanded it down. I think at the time I used like this really beautiful water-based, non-toxic stain. Like it just looked so good. And it just looks much better than what it did. And I don't know if that destroyed the value. Because sometimes even, removing all those marks and all of that vintagey goodness about it, sometimes that can actually ruin it too. So it's not just paint that can ruin furniture. So if you do a Google search, Papa Google or Mama eBay, that'll give you an idea of whether this thing is valuable or if it's something that it just looks cool to you, but it's something that just came from IKEA, right? Like, okay, I'm being facetious here. Something that comes from IKEA versus something that's like super valuable. Generally, you can tell it's just not as good of quality, but you might have liked the design and you thought, hey, this might be valuable, but check it out first. And if it's something that looks like it's got some value to it, I would hold off on painting that. And even though I know that it's just going to be for your house, if it's something that you want to sell later, you probably are not going to be able to sell it. And if you do, you wouldn't get as much money for it. So if I were to have painted that drafting table, it's not going to have the same value as, as if I just left it original or maybe even with the refinishing that I did. So be sure to do a search first before you put paint on any piece of wood furniture. And that actually goes for not just wood furniture, but anything, spray paint or whatever. Oh, let me tell you a great example. I just thought about this. So at the thrift store, sometimes I like to buy shoes at the thrift store, whether it's something that I can wear or if it's something that looks like it's a good quality leather, I'll buy it, even if it's not the right size or even if it's not comfortable. I've done this in the past and I don't know why I keep doing this, but sometimes I want to buy these expensive shoes because I have this idea that I'm going to sell it on, what are those like posh markup or whatever these places are where people can sell designer stuff. Well, I found these what is it called? Stuart Weitzman. First of all, let me just make it clear. I do not know very many name brands. So forgive me for mispronouncing this, but I believe they're Stuart Weitzman. Oh gosh. You see how little I know about fashion. but they were expensive shoes. And I may have paid $15 for them at the thrift store. Well, trying to walk in them, my goodness, it was impossible. It was like my foot just doesn't go into that arch. I just don't have arches like that on my feet. So I did a video back in 2017 where I was showing people, hey, here's all these amazing things that you can do with Rub and Buff, right? So Rub and Buff is this metallic cream that you can use on your dresser, drawer knobs, doorknobs, like lamps. You can use it on the edge of furniture. Like you can do a lot of things with it and it's really cool. You can just put it on there, buff it, and you've got some color. Well, I decided to use these like amazingly uncomfortable shoes as a demonstration because I just didn't know that these things were as expensive as, I mean, I knew that they were expensive, but they didn't have value in my mind because I couldn't wear them. They looked good on the table, but they looked horrible on my feet because I just had like this really weird arch poking out from it. And I remember using that shoe as a demonstration for how you can use Rub and Buff on shoes. And I don't know why I did this because when I buffed them, I knew that they were expensive, but I should have rechecked to make sure I'm not destroying these shoes. I totally destroyed them. And there were a couple of people in the comments who made comments. They're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you just put Rub and Buff on a pair of expensive. And I felt so stupid. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that either. So the point of the story here is make sure that you are fully checking what you're trying to paint and redecorate, because if you do mess it up, there's no turning back sometimes. The value is gone. Now, another thing that I would think to keep in mind if you're considering painting a piece of wood furniture, and I'm not even going to say wood furniture, just furniture period, is if you're just trying to be cool and trendy, if it's just the thing that's hot right now, I would say don't even paint it if it's just something that you're doing because everybody else is doing it and you're seeing it on Pinterest. You know, I remember when chevron was so popular. Remember that? Like, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, everybody was doing chevron everything. And I can just imagine that there's a lot of people who have since redecorated because it's not really in style anymore. And if you're just trying to do something because, well, this is what everybody else is doing, I guess I'll decorate it the same way. Yeah, it's going to be kind of outdated in, 5 years or whatever. And it may be something that just doesn't look good. And then you have to refinish it again. Now, I will say that, let's say you've considered all of these things, but you really just want to paint it anyway. And if it's something that, okay, you're not trying to just be cool and trendy, you really do like that style, and it's not something that you're concerned about ruining the value because you either have made peace with the fact that, okay, it is a family heirloom, but it's literally sitting in the garage, nobody's using it, and I want to use it and breathe new life into this. Let's say you've considered all of these things and you really want to do it. I would say, here's what you can do. You can actually, before you paint a piece of furniture, you can slather on a coat of shellac on the wood first before painting the wood. This is a tip that I got from a professional furniture restorer. I did an interview years ago with this woman, Mara, who owns a business locally. It's a dip and strip place where they have these huge vats of chemical stripper and people will bring projects to them and they will dip it. And I just happened to find her and I said, it'd be really interesting to interview you about what dip and strip is. And so I'll actually leave that link down below. It's a really good blog post if you want to check it out. Well, her professional refinisher was there and we were talking about painting wood furniture. And there are pieces that people will bring to him because I think not only does he do dip and strip, but he also on the side will paint furniture. He says, you know what I do? If somebody brings a really nice piece of wood to me, what I'll do is I will actually put on a coat of shellac first. He said, sometimes the people don't even know that I'm doing this. I just do it as part of my everyday now. Whenever I do every piece of furniture, it just goes on automatically. Because what that coat of shellac will do is protect that wood. It's a protective layer that's going onto the wood, and then the paint is going over top of that shellac. So later, if you decide, you know what, I really don't think I want this to be like a vibrant orange or turquoise or whatever it is that you did to it. I think I want to strip this down and maybe refinish it. It'll actually make it easier to refinish it because you've got that protective coat between the wood and the paint. So if I were you, if you are not sure whether or not this is something that you're going to want to keep this way with paint, if you're worried that it's going to be ruined, then just put a coat of shellac on it first before adding your paint. And then that way, when you go to strip it, you'll have that protective layer. Because sometimes paint will, if you're painting it, it can actually, it can destroy the wood, and you don't want to do that. So just add the protective layer. But I would say overall, the big takeaway of this, go with your gut, respect wood furniture. But if you know in your gut that you really want to do this, you don't care what your family is going to say, dead or alive, you know that you're going to add a coat of shellac, and this is just the piece that you want to use for your house, but give it a fresh look, then by all means, do with whatever you decide to do. Like paint it, put chevron stripes. If that's what you love and it's not quote unquote in style, don't have me be the one to tell you exactly what to do. I'm just giving you some ideas in case you have been considering painting something that you're just on the fence about. Just a couple things to consider. But if you really decide to make this decision, do it because you want to do it. And don't have any regrets. Have fun with it, because these are just merely guidelines for you when you take on your next project. It's your house that you're going to be decorating. You're the one that has to live in it. You might be having guests over for the upcoming Thanksgiving holidays, or for maybe Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever holidays you celebrate. You might be having people come over and they may say, oh my gosh, is that piece of furniture is that Grandma Betty's? What did you do? And you don't want it to cause a problem, but you also want to stand by your decision. So that's what I have for you for that big takeaway. Have fun with it. Have fun with it. I don't think there's any piece of furniture that I've ever painted that I've regretted painting. We don't have any family heirlooms. I don't think there's anything that I have painted where I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Or, having somebody tell it. I think if anything, the shoes. The shoes were the things that I regretted actually putting anything on, only because I probably could have sold them on Poshmark or whatever it is, Poshmark, and I could have probably made some money on them. That, I don't know what I was thinking. That was very, very stupid. But in terms of furniture, I don't think there's anything that I regretted. Several years ago, I had built a bathroom vanity. I think I've told you about this bathroom vanity. It was red oak. I had pulled out the old existing 1970s vanity and decided that I was going to build a new vanity. And it actually turned out. There was a few mistakes here and there, but overall, it's held up. I was so worried this thing would just crash to the ground after the big piece of granite was laid on top. But surprisingly, it has survived. It hasn't cracked, warped, knock on wood. I'm very superstitious that way. So after building that project and knowing how much wood cost and having to go through the process of trying to pull out that beautiful wood grain of the red oak, it really changed my belief on painting wood. It really did, because I felt like I'd spent so much money on the wood. It was very expensive. To think of spending that kind of money on wood and then painting it, it just didn't make any sense. So I started looking at wood a little differently. Plus, the way that I finished that wood, oh my gosh, it was so gorgeous. In fact, I was telling someone about it today. I love the look of Cerussed oak. So, oak has that beautiful grain. And when you put stain on oak, it tends to just accumulate a little bit more. That pigment gets really pulled into that grain and it leaves it really dark. And I don't like that look. I think in my opinion, it's a very dated look. But if you actually do a white wax or a liming wax, it looks so good on oak, especially even if you leave it natural and just do a liming wax in that grain. It looks so good. It looks beautiful. And I've done a couple of projects that way. Well, with this vanity that I did for my bathroom, I did a wood dye. And I think the reason why I did wood dye is because I didn't want anything that was, I didn't want any sort of like thick pigment to settle into that grain. I wanted that grain to be completely open so that when the white wax or the liming wax went into the grain, it was all liming wax. There was no pigment in there to make it look spotty. And it was so beautiful. Like it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And I think after going through that process and seeing how beautiful wood and the grain of wood really was, it made me not want to just jump into paint as being the first thing that I did with furniture. It made me look at furniture a little differently so that each piece was unique. So some pieces would actually get paint and it was no problem. The other pieces that had that beautiful deep grain that could be highlighted with the liming wax, I mean, those pieces would get that treatment. And even now to this day, and that was 2017 maybe, I think, when I did that, when I built that. So even now when I look at furniture, if it's oak, I don't paint it. Now, I will tell you, over on my YouTube channel, I just uploaded the other day a video that I did with this sewing cabinet. I think I was telling you about it the other day or in the last episode. And I actually used a color stain. It was sponsored by Minwax, and I used their product. It actually worked pretty well. And I don't know why, but some of the comments and some of the reviews on, I believe it was Lowe's website, it got horrible reviews. And I don't really know why. I don't know what people did that it didn't work out too well. But for me, it worked out very well. And what I liked is that I could slather it on. It was very thick, like paint. But you take this applicator pad, and you wipe it off. So you're wiping off the excess. And then when it dries, and it dries very quickly, you still can see, depending on if you're using the solid or the semi-permanent, you can still see and feel the grain. So I was able to then go over that pink, quote unquote, painted wood stain with a liming wax, and it gave it some depth. So it was almost like the perfect mix between wanting to preserve the wood and the grain and actually adding color. So you can find that on my YouTube channel. I will leave a link down below so you can check that out and see how it works. But for me, I had good results with it. I didn't have any problem with it. But there are products that are coming on the market so that you can sort of enjoy the beauty of the wood, but still give it some color. And I believe the semi-permanent, I did actually buy a semi-permanent in this Minwax product line, and I did a sample of it. Did I like it? I don't know. I don't know if I liked it because the sample that I had, it wasn't big enough for me to determine whether or not I liked it. But, there are products that are hitting the market that allows you to enjoy some of that color and still be able to appreciate that it's wood. So it doesn't have to be either or. Leave it, this big brown, I was going to use another word, this big brown piece of furniture in your living room versus something that's painted. I don't think at this point in time it has to be either or. You can find the right product that's going to allow you to appreciate both. So you will find that link down below. But it turned out really well. And I think if you just look at each piece of furniture for its uniqueness, then you can determine what's the best thing to do. Look at the history of it. Look at the unique properties of it. There are some pieces of furniture that I was not going to refinish this because it had so many nooks and crannies that I did not want to take the time to have to strip and stain something that has lots of grooves, and it's hard to do that. In my opinion, it's hard to do that. And I don't have that kind of patience to refinish something that's not just flat. So sometimes when I refinish things, if it has a flat surface, right, the top is flat and it's not too ornate, I will strip and preserve the top, but I'll paint the body, especially if it's something that is like a buffet and it's got a lot of grooves and things. I don't want to spend time trying to pull stain out of a buffet. So I'll paint the body and try to preserve the top. In fact, one of my favorite projects that I did was a 1980s French Provençal, I guess it was a vanity, but I used it as a sewing desk. It's in my basement here. In fact, I'm looking at it now. And I did pink, but I tried to preserve that top and just left it natural and did a couple coats of top coat, but the body was pink. And people in the comments, my goodness, they were like, "You ruined a antique piece of furniture." I'm like, dude, it was 1980. It's stamped on the bottom. So if it's stamped on the bottom, there's no way that I ruined an antique. It's not 100 years old. 1980 was not that long ago. Okay, it was like maybe 38 years, or gosh, no, not even 38, like 42 years or whatever. So anyway, there's always going to be people that are going to tell you that you ruined it. But I think if you can look at each piece of furniture, like I said, look at its history, look at the value of the piece itself, if it's valuable or maybe it's invaluable to your family, or if you just really want to have this particular style of furniture, but you don't want any of the wood tones, do you? But at least ask yourself these questions. And at the end, if you come up with, you know what, I don't care about any of that, I just really want to paint this pink or green or whatever it is, white, black, then by all means do it. Because you're the only one that's going to be living in that house. Well, I mean, you might have a husband who's going to complain, or a wife, whatever, but you're the only one who's going to be living there, seeing it day in and day out. And, you have to live with it. And if you're happy with it, there you go. Okay, I do want to update you on how the 90 Days to Neat Love Your Home challenge is going. Last week, I did tell you that I was starting this challenge. It's just something that if you want to do it with me informally, there's no official sign up. It is something that I am doing. I'm trying to spend 1 hour every day making my home decluttered and focusing on some of these things that I've been meaning to do in each of the rooms, and to start thinking about what are the things that I can bring into a space in order to love it more. So this week, I actually was pretty productive. You'd be so proud of me. So I started with my dining room. And I started there because that's the room that aside from my bedroom, that's the room that I think I use the most. Every morning I have this routine. I love having my oatmeal in the dining room. I sit at the table and I work on a jigsaw puzzle. I've been doing this since the pandemic. It was like December of 2020 that I just somehow discovered, oh my gosh, I love puzzles. So every day, Monday through Friday, I'm working on a puzzle in the morning. I love 1,000-piece puzzles, 2,000-piece. Oh, by the way, for anybody who's listening to this, if you live in the Maryland area, DC area, and you love puzzles, please email me, serena@thriftdiving.com. As part of my clean out in my dining room, I am getting rid of a bunch of puzzles. I mean, I have a whole big black contractor's plastic bag of puzzles that I've done over the last couple of years that I can't do anything with. I'm not going to redo the puzzles. And I thought maybe I would just donate them to like a senior citizen home or something like that. But if you are somebody who lives in this area and you want some puzzles, please do message me. I will give you these puzzles. And they're really nice ones. They're Ravensburger, they're buffalo puzzle, like really nice puzzles, not the cheesy ones you get from Five Below. I spent money on these puzzles. And now I will tell you, there are some pieces missing. I don't know how this happens. I don't know if it's something that I do or something that the manufacturers do. But the last puzzle that I did, a piece was missing and I looked everywhere. And I know that I didn't vacuum between the time that I started the puzzle and when I was done. So I don't know where it is. So there might be a few of these pieces missing, or maybe one piece missing from here and there, from this puzzle and that puzzle. But please email me, serena@thriftdiving.com. I'm not going to mail anything because that's just too much. But if you live locally and you want to meet me somewhere so I can give you a big bag of puzzles, I'm down. Just email me. But yeah, so I've been making progress this week in doing some of these things, bagging up the puzzles. I also had cleaned the floors, which, oh my gosh, I can't even remember when the last time I had run something over the floor other than a vacuum, to clean the floors. But also just little nicks and things that were in the paint. I pulled out the dry decks, sanded that down a little bit, got the touch-up paint. So little things like that I've been doing. Now I'm going to start looking for a new rug because the rug that's in there, it doesn't really fit. I mean, it fits, but I just want something new and different. And I think the rug that's there, I'll just clean it and maybe put it somewhere else in the house. So I've got a few other things that I'm going to do in there. But yeah, the dining room was the place that I was focusing on. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to focus on, but I want to know from you, are you working on the 90 Days to Neat Love Your Home challenge? Are you doing this? If you are, I want to hear from you. What are you doing to love your home and which rooms are you working on? Email me, serena@thriftdiving.com. All right, guys, that's what I got for you this week. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Let me know if there's a piece of furniture that you finally was able to make a decision about. based on this conversation. I would love to hear from you, Serena@thriftdiving.com, or send me a message at thriftdiving on Instagram. And remember, I am working on a power tools course, and I've actually started making progress. I'm drafting things out, and I'm going to be starting filming very, very soon. So if you are someone who wants to learn how to use power tools and get your workspace set up and just all of these woodworking things to help you get started with your first project, go to thriftdiving.com/tools, and you can actually sign up to be one of the first people to hear about the power tools course when it becomes available. And I think when I'm able to get it out there, it's probably going to be maybe about February, but this is my top priority. So I'm going to be working on this, and I want you to have first dibs on being able to sign up for this. And I'm still designing everything right now, but it's going to be really cool because I think we'll be able to work together maybe via Zoom as well, so that as you make your first cut, I will be there helping you and making sure that you do it properly. That's pretty cool. I can't wait to help you. All right, guys, that's what I have for you. Have an amazing weekend, and I will see you next episode.
Diving. Find it ugly, make it pretty. Paint a power tools, alright. Saving money with those thrift store vibes. Yeah, thrift diving. Find it ugly, make it pretty. Paint power tools, alright. Saving money with those